Hello, and welcome to this, our Fruit Logistica 2026 briefing. We're just 2 weeks away from the opening of the doors in Berlin on Wednesday, the 4th of February, and you're very welcome here today on Tuesday, the 20th of January, to join us for this 60 minutes of briefing about, what's happening in Berlin, about really, actually, although that's very important, very importantly, about our subject of today's briefing, which is this world of artificial intelligence. And we'll be coming to that subject in due course. It's one that you'll have read about already, of course, in the fantastic trend report that's been put together for this year's Fruit Logistica. It's the subject on everybody's mind at the moment, and it's being very actively pursued by many businesses in our wonderful world of fresh fruits and vegetables. And we'll be meeting 3 representatives from businesses who are actively using or worrying about or involved with AI in due course. But first, we're going to turn to our host in Berlin, and I'm very happy to welcome to us today to David Ruetz. David is the Senior Vice President at Messe Berlin, and he's the guy who's in charge, I guess, at Fruit Logistica. Welcome, David. You're joining us down the line from Berlin, from where you live, your home. You're just off the plane from Mexico. I know you're heading to Bangkok very shortly as well, but you will be in Berlin for Fruit Logistica in just a couple of weeks' time. As always, we've got people joining joining us at Fruit Logistica from everywhere around the world, as always. What's it looking like in 2026 Fruit Logistica, and why does the show matter, David?
Well, Chris, there's no doubt that Fruit Logistica is the world's most important gathering place for the fresh produce business, and it provides a global network, truly. I think what makes us unique is that we connect the entire value chain from point of seed to point of sale, from farm to fork, as they say, and that we are bringing the global industry together in one location in Berlin. Which means in 2026, we'll have about 2,500 exhibiting companies from over 90 countries worldwide, which is the greatest gathering worldwide in Berlin from 4th to 6th February. And we'll showcase solutions, we'll build partnerships, we'll drive business. So in a nutshell, Fruit Logistica Berlin is the place to be for anybody who is somebody in the fresh produce business.
And that's the way it's been since I think since its inception. I remember being at the first one. That ages me now, which is more than 35 years ago. And I'm really looking forward to being at this next one, this new edition in 2026. So, David, what new things can we expect? What are the key highlights for this year's show?
I can foresee from what I have speaking with our teams that Fruit Logistica 2026 is driven by momentum and growth. Our team this year is Let's Grow. You'll see that on everywhere during the show, and this captures the spirit of an industry that's really moving forward with determination. So we'll have a very strong content program on 6 stages with 200 speakers and highly visible innovation formats like startups and science to award-worthy solutions that will set new benchmarks for the sector. On a personal note, what's new also is we'll have a photo exhibition from London photographer Clive Bursnell, who went to the old Covent Garden and the new Covent Garden fresh produce market and took some exciting photos. So I hope you join us in Hall 21 to just step by that exhibition.
Yes, I've been involved in putting that together, and it's a really wonderful. It demonstrates the way things in many ways don't change and yet change all the time in our business, and that's really one of the subjects, or the subject actually, of today's digital briefing. This focus on AI, on artificial intelligence and automation. From your point of view, David, where do you see the biggest impact for fresh fruits and vegetables right now?
Chris, AI and automation are certainly the game changers across the entire supply chain. There's no doubt about it. But we see a major impact in production, in quality control, in logistics, in cold chain management, and even in sales. And AI is helping companies become more efficient, resilient, more consistent. I'm sure we'll hear from the three experts about that. But I also would like to point out our Fruit Logistica Trend Report 2026, which goes under the motto Control, Alt, Refresh, which is the keys that you use to refresh everything. And surely it's a refreshing moment for the industry. And that's exactly why Fruit Logistica this year matters very much, and what we will reflect real solutions, relevant technologies, and progress presented by companies who are the innovators in the sector.
And we'll be talking, of course, to the report's author Mike Knowles in just a few moments. But David, how do you at Fruit Logistica, how do you think, or how are you bringing innovation to life, and helping these new solutions to gain visibility? Because it's a very important part of what the show is all about, isn't it?
I strongly believe that innovation needs to be the core of a trade show, beside the network content and in the end making business. But we make innovation visible. An example is our startup world with 18 startups from 11 countries. We have a future lab which showcases forward-looking technologies. And new this year is the new product showcase, which give even innovations a platform, helping trade visitors and also exhibitors discover solutions that stand out and that give exhibitors maximum visibility.
Now, it's also what has been always part of Fruit Logistica has been its very famous Innovation Award. It's a very coveted prize, and it's celebrating a special anniversary this year. What should we know, David?
The year 2026 marks the 20th anniversary of the International Fruit Logistica Innovation Award, and that remains one of the most exciting moments for me personally during the show. It will take place on Friday afternoon of Fruit Logistica, and at the moment we have 10 nominees in the category Fresh Produce and Technology. And the votes are taking place the first days, the public votes are taking place the first 2 days of Fruit Logistica. So don't miss that award ceremony because it celebrates the solutions that truly move our industry forward. And many of the winners of the past years have developed from startups into big and relevant companies. And we're keen to see that will happen this year as well.
And I often see those, it always makes me smile that some of those innovations that we've seen as prize winners down the years, you see on the shelves of your local supermarket, which is fantastic. And it shows how far some of these products have come. Now, we've got a global audience watching us here live, also in LinkedIn. And there's that global audience we'll be watching on Catch Up rather later. What's your message to the global industry that's tuned in, David?
Well, if I could close up with a simply by saying this industry has enormous potential, but there's a need to discuss a lot, from tariffs to the Mercosur agreement to AI. And the next chapter in the industry will be defined how we approach those challenges and how we innovate and how we collaborate. So under the theme Let's Grow, I invite everyone to join us during Fruit Logistica 4th to 6th of February this year. Come to connect, be part of a global network which expands to Asia and the Americas, and take real momentum back into your business and into the supply chain.
Wonderful. David, thank you very much indeed. I look forward to seeing you in just a couple of weeks in sunny Berlin. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Good. Well, let's move on from that conversation with David, which sets the scene very much for what we can expect at this year's Fruit Logistica, to a discussion now with the author of the Trend Report. The Trend Report is something that has been put together by Fruit Logistica over the last number of years now, and which our guest now, Mike Knowles, has been the author of. Mike, if there's somebody who knows about trends, you're the one who knows about them. And I remember in the discussions we were having about what the subject of the 2026 Trend Report might be, you were very, very clear that it had to be all about AI. You chose the right subject, didn't you?
Well, I hope so. I mean, when I set out on this journey to write this report, I thought, well, my goodness, what am I letting myself in for? Because it's such a huge topic. I almost need an extra artificial brain to try and comprehend all of these different things that are going on. But what we did was we talked to lots of people in the business, as we normally do on any subject, and tried to get all their views on what was happening. And really, as David's alluded to, the overriding feeling is that there's an acceleration of technological development. So AI and automation are already reshaping many parts of the fresh produce supply chain, in different instances, different individual cases. But those proven applications across production, post-harvest, logistics, even into retail now, they're no longer distant concepts. They are actual, real technologies being applied. And gradually that's all starting to coalesce and become part of a new system. It's almost like AI is being overlaid across the whole business.
Now, Mike, you were working on this Trend Report in 2025. The Trend Report was published in October of that year. It's available, I think, to download from the FRUIT Logistica website. It already feels we're now in at the end of January 2026 that things are moving quite quickly. What were some of the key findings you had of the Trend Report?
Well, that's the thing. It's always the case when you write about trends. You're freezing it in time, and you're then expecting people to then update later on. I think really the conclusions we came up with were that labour shortages are a particular driver. That's what's pushing people into automation, and indeed the idea of better sustainability, better keeping a limit on costs. All of those kind of gains go hand in hand. If you're looking 5-10 years into the future and you can see a technology that will put a lid on your costs or reduce your wastage or make you more environmentally friendly in the long run, those drivers are what are pushing people into using this technology a lot more. But there are also some challenges. There's the idea that different networks and different AI technologies don't always talk to each other, and that integration needs to come, but otherwise there's going to be bottlenecks and it's not really worth investing in the technology in the first place. And also then there's the age-old question of, well, how much human expertise is going to be needed? Is it going to help decision making, or is it going to replace people who were there in the supply chain before? And really in the long run, I think the direction of travel is that AI is becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's becoming a point of difference for certain people in the supply chain. So therefore, other people competing need to look and have the same technologies, or indeed a better technology. But yeah, there's loads of impact all over the place on farms, in distribution networks, and possibly even now into the realm of retail, predictive analytics, predicting what demand there will be in a market, and then supplying that in the most efficient way possible.
I think also on the side of consumers who are now using AI to tell them, what should I be eating if I want to lose these few pounds that I put on over the Christmas period, or chatting to AI on a daily basis to determine what they do next in their lives. Now we're talking about a business-to-business relationship. Of course, we're talking about the work of us in the fresh fruit and vegetable business. You write in your intro, whether we're reading the leaves in a teacup or the bytes on a computer drive, we're all making the same fundamental mistake if we assume that the future is only shaped by things that have already happened. I underline that in pen, because it occurred to me what we're talking about here is a technology that's emerging, that's developing, that we don't know the full extent of it yet. And these new technologies that you've talked about and that you've written about so interestingly in the Trend Report, where are these new technologies, in your opinion, having the biggest impact in the fresh produce business right now, today?
I think right now it's fair to say, and this is not just my view, this is the view of the people we spoke to, it's really in the production side of things. So that smart agri trend has been around for a while. It's writ large in a phenomenon like vertical farming. So vertical farming is really, it's been the kind of test bed for so many technologies. And some of them are now going into mainstream production. So the one that springs to mind is that you can now hook up the roots of a plant and listen to it, in inverted commas, know when it's under stress, so know when it doesn't have enough water or too much water, or all of those kind of things. And that monitoring is bringing and creating and cultivating a lot of data, and that data is becoming more and more usable. So in the production sphere, I think there's some real big impact. Growers themselves are becoming technicians and technologists and knowing how to manage data and interpret it. I think then further down the line, you're going to see more and more supply chain optimization. I came across the word agentic this year. That was applied to a logistics service provider who has a huge amount of data to process, and they need AI systems to look at them and say, well, if that delivery is 3 hours late and it needs to be delivered to this cold store warehouse, but that cold store warehouse 3 hours later is not available, it will automatically reroute and take the produce somewhere else. Those kind of humanless, automated decisions are starting to be made in the chain itself. We've seen a lot of AI in quality control. I know you're going to be talking to Elad about that later. And then I think the new frontier is in retail. I think it's retailers have some very kind of old systems. I think it's to be fair, because to undo them is to risk a lack of supply, empty shelves. I think the new frontier now is retailers being able to say, well, we have a better idea of what our demand will be because of XYZ data that's inputted into the system. And the stuff they get out is, well, here's what we need. And we'll work with our suppliers and we have a much clearer picture of what fruits and vegetables we need.
I wonder if AI is going to have an impact on the way in which we shop. I mean, we're essentially shopping in much the same way as we have done for 100 years. We go into a supermarket, we take a trolley, and we wander around the store. And what impact that may have on AI, that's probably what impact AI might have on that, rather. But that's perhaps a trend report for the future that we can talk about. This space is shifting so quickly. You interviewed a lot of people for the Trend Report, Mike. What did the report have to say as far as the future impact of AI and automation? What are they saying there?
Well, I think, as I say, the ability to forecast is going to be the thing. I think there's also the notion that we're moving inexorably towards entirely automated supply chains. I mean, if you take a flight of fancy, you could well imagine that the response and the demand signals from the market could automatically inform the kind of products that are bred and developed. And some of that will involve gene editing, which has just been permitted in the EU. And those would be developed in a lab, all automated. They would then be moved into a production space like a vertical farm, and those products would self-generate, and then they'd be harvested by a robot, taken to market by an automated driverless vehicle, land on the shelves, and there the consumer is picking up something that's entirely generated and delivered by AI. I think you should probably qualify that and say, well, that would require an incredible amount of interoperability, incredible amount of coordination, and ultimately you can't really imagine that happening without some kind of human intervention. I guess that's the key question, is will our supply chains become entirely automated, or is that too far a step?
Well, I think that question, Mark, is a very good point to end, but also to set us up, Mike, for our discussion now with our experts. Thank you, Mike, for your contribution, and thank you again for authoring a really fantastic trend report this year, which again is available on the Fruit Logistica website. That's right, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Good. Okay, we'll see you in Berlin in a couple of weeks' time. Do stop Mike and ask him what he's doing, how he's using AI in his life. Mike, thank you very much indeed for your contribution this morning.
My pleasure.
Good. Well, let's turn now with those questions that Mike has posed and the many others posed that we find day to day in this world of artificial intelligence, by inviting my three panelists who are joining us now for the next half hour or so of discussions. I'm delighted to be joined from all over the world. From the Netherlands, Wouter Kuiper is from Kubo and sitting top right of our screen, I think I'm right in saying. Elad Mardix is joining us from Israel, from Clarifresh. Elad, welcome. And last but not least, Bradford Warner from Agrofresh, who's got up especially early in the United States to join us from the Midwest, where he is. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time today. Thank you for joining me in this discussion about AI. Just quickly, I know this is kind of a I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway. The extent to which AI is making a difference today in your businesses, it is making a difference, isn't it, Wouter?
Yes, it is. But I think it's still on a starting ground, let's say.
Okay.
So I think our organization is getting used to it, and we are also working on ideas and for services for our customers. But really having something new yet is not there.
Okay.
Not at the moment.
Elad, to you.
It's because it's your best advisor at the moment. That's what we're doing.
Wonderful. I'll come back to you. Elad, to you. What role is AI playing in your business today? A big role.
Yeah, well, for us, it's a little bit of a different story because when we established the business back in 2018, we were actually planning to apply AI technology into our product. So we started this journey probably in 2021 when we introduced our first kind of version to the market. It was mainly focused around computer vision, which we can talk more about it later if we want. It has expanded significantly over the last 18 months to other areas around analytics and reporting and the ability to give access to data to other stakeholders through the AI extension, which we probably wouldn't be able to do if we didn't have this amazing generative AI development over the last 24 months.
Okay, thank you. Bradford, to you, this fundamental question about the difference that AI is making to your business. You're using it, you're applying it today, and it's making a difference, is it?
Yeah, I would say, Chris, we're in a phase right now that allows us to put a high level of scrutiny on what we expect the outcomes to be associated with implementing either sophisticated machine learning models or eventually AI to sit on top of that. So obviously we have a wealth of data at our fingertips operating across more than 50 countries and many crop types to look at that. But I would say somewhere in between the comments you heard from Wouter and Elad, we're trying to be very deliberate in how we're building the infrastructure to support AI conclusions that sit on top of really good, clean data sets that are being captured at different points across the supply chain. I think we'll see some implementation this year that will probably provide insights that people have not expected before, that actually get into forecasting in instances today where we've been very reactive often in this industry for good reason. But now we have the opportunity to be proactive, to think ahead, to look at the implications of things that might have happened pre-harvest and how they're going to impact quality post-harvest, the deliverability of the product, the shelf life of the product. But you have to be very, I think, conservative in terms of the outcomes you expect from that data before you put things out into production and just say this is a new way to look at the world.
Is that because there's a feeling that gee, this may not be right. It may be wrong. There's a hunch you've got that perhaps the technology isn't as right as it needs to be. What are the reasons for that hesitation there?
It's a great question, Chris. I mean, I sometimes think of the data science behind this in maybe 4 big categories. So the first is, are you capturing relevant data that's clean and consistent at that particular point in the supply chain? And obviously, there are already applications today that significantly use machine learning and to some extent AI to look at, for example, the maturity of a piece of fruit still in the pre-harvest mode. That's one way to look at it. The next is, once you've captured that data, are you actually able to integrate it into a database that's fairly consistent across other ways that data is being collected, perhaps in other countries, or other ways people are rating that quality. So there's a consistency in the standardization of the data. And then lastly, are you able to bring it back into an insight engine that's going to be reliable, Chris, right? It's not going to hallucinate, as we read about some AI. It's not going to make up a pleasing equation just to try and make you feel good about it, but that you can test it the same way you would have traditional BI and feel that certain that the result is something you're very, very confident in.
Yeah. Now, Emma, I remember standing in a citrus orchard not far from where you're sitting today in Israel many, many years ago. And I learned a very important thing. The chief executive of one of the biggest citrus companies in Israel said to me at the time, says, Chris, you have to understand garbage in, garbage out. You know, if you put garbage into your pack house, you'll only get garbage out of your pack house. 30 years later, this question about the integrity of data that goes through some kind of AI bit in the middle, for you, that data integrity is very, very important, because if you put data that isn't good in, you get bad data out. I'm not explaining it very well, but I guess you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Brad's comment on that point before. I think there is 2 challenges around the adoption of this technology into our end markets, right? I think most of the people probably on this call know the culture of the key stakeholders across the supply chain, and I think technology adoption historically has been very slow, and we need to ask ourselves why. I think there's a couple of reasons. Reason number 1 is that the track record, to be honest, of most ag tech companies that introduced the product to the market, I would dare to say even over the last 10 years, mostly has been limited. And what I mean by limited is that a lot of times it did not work at scale, right? It's one thing to have your product work in a pilot environment or a few customers, but if you want to scale it to millions of users in different regions, it's a whole different capacity. And I think that's something that the industry has experienced a lot of failures in the past. And the second issue is that a lot of the players in our supply chain have a lot of challenges in terms of profitability. You guys mentioned some of them before, labor shortages, and there's a lot of things that have happened over the last 5 years, right, from COVID to inflation. And I think that gives very narrow margin of error for our potential customers to adopt technology and for us as the vendors to execute on. What it means is that I think we need to be sure that the ROI of what we present to our customers is very clear and can be tangible within the first few months of a year. Otherwise, I honestly think it's going to be very hard to convince the decision makers to scale it. And the other thing is to make sure, to Bradford's point before, that it's accurate. Now, the question is, what is accurate, right? And I have a lot of discussion with the customers on that. My point to them is always to say, look, we commit that we're going to be better than the human judgment that you currently have. I can tell you in my world, which is quality evaluation, if I put all 4 people in the screen now to do QC of a specific box or a bin, there will be probably between 21 to 25% of variance between each one of us on how we call the ultimate quality, right? So I think you got to be at least better than the human, which means higher than 80% accuracy. I can tell you when we introduced our first version of the computer vision, which analyzes size and color for most categories today, we achieved 95% accuracy, but I think that's easier than what we are focusing on now, which is automating defects. We do aspire to get to 95%, but we're probably going to start, and we're starting this year actually on the citrus category with a couple of North American customers with an accuracy level of about 80%. So I think it needs to be better than the human, and the customer need to be able to experience it on her own rather than take my word for that.
Now, this question about the being better than the human, as you said a moment ago, Walter, I come to you, because I know you've been looking at a particular project. I think it's called Pilot, one of your projects, which is all about autonomous cultivation. And that, if I understand it correctly, is where you take the human being out of that cultivation process. You're one of the world's leading suppliers of high-tech glasshouses. I walk into glasshouses today and I think, where are all the human beings? But there are human beings there. Are we looking at a future, thanks to AI, where actually you have glasshouses with tomatoes growing in them, but no human intervention at all?
Maybe far, far away in time, but I don't expect that to happen in the mid-term or in the long term. I don't foresee that happening in the next 5 to 10 years. And everybody that's saying, hey, you know, I have a system for autonomous growing is telling you a fairy tale. That's bottom line what it is. That's where we are. Then that said, however, you know, I think AI will bring us a lot. And I think if I look, for example, if I look at what can a grower contribute, that's experience, that's intuition, crop feeling, and also contextual judgment. AI brings something else. AI has the ability to detect subtle patterns across large data sets. It can also evaluate multiple scenarios simultaneously, and can also anticipate risk before it's been seen by human beings. So it can contribute heavily to support the grower and to help the grower to be better at his work. That's what we see the coming 5 years to 10 years it will evolve to. And of course, in that time, after that, we will grow to semi-autonomous growing, but not on the short run. I don't foresee that.
I remember recently having to take my car to the garage. This is relevant, I promise you. And the mechanic was telling me that the big problem they have these days is finding mechanics who can fit cars. They're looking now for data scientists who know, oh, you've got too many data scientists who now fix the computers in cars. And the thing I'm interested to know is that grower who has an expertise at growing tomatoes, cucumbers, whatever it is, he's not a data scientist. He doesn't understand necessarily. He's got a skill as a grower, but not as a computer technologist. Do you think the grower of the future is going to have that familiarity with this new world of AI in a way that kind of seems unimaginable today?
Now, we strongly believe in the combination of. So the pragmatism of a grower is very valuable. And also, let's say, the scientific approach of a scientist is also very valuable. And combine that too, and I think then that's where the goal is. That's where you can really make a difference. So I think for the time being, in the coming years, that both are needed. So yeah, if you are a grower, you're not very high educated, hire somebody that is highly skilled on that field, and you know you can never take away the experience of a pragmatic grower.
Yeah,
that combination is that's the strength. So bring science into the greenhouse and use the pragmatism of a grower.
This question about that combination is a very interesting and very key aspect of all of this. The Bradford, you talked very interestingly just recently in a post I was reading about expectations and reality, and they're converging and diverging at the same time. Explain a bit more what you mean by that, and what is the problem that you see?
So I think the ideal scenario, Chris, is you look for a convergence, meaning there's a clear and discrete business need that's going to be met, right? And now you're able to really test the data science behind a solution you want to deploy, and they frankly come together in a graceful way. And it's okay to look at a bunch of those simultaneously and say that there might be a portion of those that we're not at the right point, to what was our earlier point, right? That we're just not quite there from a data science perspective, and it's okay to put that to the side. But I think when you look at those that do truly converge, for example, some of the work that we're doing in pre-harvest maturity prediction, or tech enabling some of the inspections that have been handled by human beings, there is a variability, right, that comes to the human deployment of measurement or testing today on all sorts of different fruits. And that's a reality. But when you look at it specifically, you say, we're not necessarily looking to just blanket remove humans from the equation, but how do we augment their results so that they are more consistent, they are more accurate? And some people will bring up three qualities. They'll say, can you be faster, better, or cheaper? And if you can at least hit two of those variables, then you're probably impacting the business in a way that's going to create a virtuous circle. And I think the elements of that circle, Chris, come back to, are you doing something that enhances the profitability of that player and hopefully multiple players right inside a cold chain? Are you increasing then the sustainability of that supply chain because you're, for example, reducing a waste number? And then at the same time, you've not only enhanced profitability and the sustainability of the supply chain, but you've done it in such a way that brings something back around in terms of overall quality improvement, right? So there's a margin appreciation that goes with the fruit that was delivered. So that's good for a grower, that's good for a packer or a distributor or an exporter, and it's good for the retailer. And ultimately, as you said at the beginning, it's good for the consumer, right? Because you want to get the highest quality product at a good competitive price. And there's a lot of technology applications going on right now that should deliver that in a meaningful way.
Ahmad, I imagine for you that well, for all of us actually, the big driver of AI is it's really about being more efficient. It's about trying to strip out even more even more elements of cost in that supply chain. Is that the correct way to see it?
So I think there's a couple of vectors. The first one is the one you described, which is, I think, and we need to explain what you mean by efficiency, but it's to enhance existing processes that either are totally manual or are driven by a different kind of development framework. Although I think that it will make it more efficient, and but there's a couple of other elements of that. The first one is that I think the AI can create a much more proactive framework of analytics. So rather than go to a dashboard on a periodical basis or wait for a report that should be refreshed automatically for you and then draw conclusions from that, if you can implement AI into the customer data and actually generate alerts that would recommend our customer, for example, to do things differently or to reach out to one of their suppliers to check on stuff that we saw in another supplier, I think that could actually optimize decision making and or reduce potential issues. So that's one example of AI in efficiency, which is just not being reactive. And I think the other alternative is, or the other capability is to make the data accessible to more stakeholders. So for example, in my world, most of my users today would be across the quality and operation buckets, right? The guys who are using our software to manage their quality wherever they are in the supply chain. I think with the ChatGPT/Claude user interface, where I would think most of us are already using it on our mobile phone, right, and asking all type of questions during the entire day. We, for example, introduced what we call Ask Me Anything, and the user interface of that analytic is literally like ChatGPT. It actually runs on ChatGPT. And I think it could make a difference for sales guys, for example, in the supplier side, or for category managers, for retailers, because now they're going to have the ability to just ask a very specific question that they care about that minute and get the answer instantly, rather than needed to think about it a couple of days before, prepare a report or ask for a report, which just makes it much more complex. So I think that's how AI can increase efficiency from a generative AI perspective. I think the other vector, which I think is more unique to us, is on the computer vision. Most of our models are essentially rely on machine learning, which gets more and more accurate as more and more data is being fed into the algorithm. But that's a little bit of a different vector.
Sure. This question that always fascinates me is the as it were the speed with which the technology develops. You mentioned about most of us these days are using ChatGPT on our mobile phones. I confess I'm quite I've been slow to start, but I now use it, and I don't use Google in the way that I used to ask questions of Google. I ask them as ChatGPT in a way that I didn't before, and I'm sure the technology will develop and develop really very quickly. But a moment ago you talked about the future, and you referred to a time frame of 5 to 10 years, and I thought, gosh, that's not very long. But actually, when I look at the evolution of the technology, 5 to 10 years feels like an age,
ages.
like ages.
At least what they tell us, where it's going to. But yeah, but what's the question? Sorry.
But for you as running a business, making decisions, how do you? And I'm sure many people watching this today will be thinking the same thing. How do you decide on something when the technology may shift or may evolve so quickly that decision you take in January is no longer relevant by the time December comes around?
Well, I think with this technology, and you're right, it goes so fast. So what we do is, I think what you have to do is just start with it. So enable your teams or empower your teams that they can work with it, and also, hire an AI manager. And just start and evolve with the changes of the technology and how it progresses. That's, I think, the best advice that I can give, and that's actually how we try to do it. And I don't say we have the wisdom, but I think that's the way to go.
Bradford, you'd agree with that, presumably?
I would, Chris. I would say in any particular area of the supply chain right now, there might be a different maturity curve, right? And where something really is in its end application. So we've talked about at least one, when we talk about computer visioning or image capture, that has evolved very rapidly, I would say, even over the last 36 months, to the extent now that we're working with a partner in our Fresh Cloud ecosystem that I think can reliably show size, color. From that, you can also look at blemishes. You can actually look at maturity analysis and density within an orchard, within a block, within an orchard to do that. And you'd say, okay, that maturity curve starts to feel pretty good, Chris, when you can run that against apples, pears, citrus, grapes, right? And you come back with a variety of conclusions that are statistically more accurate, right, than what a human being is going to do manually, right, walking around collecting that data. And you say, all right, we're at a point in that adoption curve now where we need to make this available. Stay away from the bleeding edge. Work on the leading edge, you can bring that in. And that's where I think the best way you don't get yourself in trouble with AI as you look at that particular data point. Do you believe in it? Is it reproducible? And then you expand from there. And I think we're going to have multiple examples of that across cold chain, whether you're talking about inspecting things post-harvest, the environmental monitoring of storing them along the way, the actual automation of the insights when you should be able to move or ship or export a product, and even watching the shipping curve. All of those things will eventually impact the holy grails that we're all interested in, like shelf life prediction.
And for you then, what are those? Are kind of all the known knowns, if I can put it like that. What are the unknown unknowns that you're looking at? What are the things that you cast into the future 5, 10 months time, 5, 10 years time? Where do you want it to go? Where do you want it to make a difference, an even bigger difference to your to your business and to the work you do? Bradford?
Yeah, I think ultimately you want to be in a scenario where your business becomes more predictable. And let's be honest, when you deal with anything in production agriculture, you're dealing with one of the most complicated arithmetic models ever created, right? Because there are so many elements, including weather, geopolitics, tariff situations, things that you cannot begin to control. So I do think, Chris, you have to focus in on the known unknowns. I think that's a useful way of thinking of things and saying, all right, if I want to look at the maturity around particular crops that are highly sensitive to being either sellable or not, like an avocado, for example. And I know there's an unknown between certain ripening cycles, and that's why 30 to 40% of these are being wasted. Then that's where we have to focus in how we reduce the uncertainty, make that far more predictable, and that will in turn then bring down the waste number.
Erland, what do you think? What is the future for you with this tech, and where do you see it going, and what would you like it to be able to do that it doesn't do today?
Yeah, for us, so our mission as a company hasn't really changed over the last 8 years. We built the company in order to essentially create one common language for the entire supply chain, from the field down to the front store of a Walmart, to speak the same language and evaluate consistently the quality that is essential of the supply that exchange hands across the chain. We started with just pure digitalization, and we introduced against early versions of AI back in 21. And I think the ultimate goal for us and for the industry is to try and essentially remove all human judgment of the inspection process in quality. And I choose my words carefully. Remove the judgment does not mean that you're not going to have humans. You're always going to have humans, because there are the guys that essentially are operating the systems and ultimately give the context to the decisions. But we want to eliminate the variance, the inconsistency across the human judgment. So when an inspection is taking place in departure point versus at receiving point, putting aside transportation impact, the call around the quality judgment is always going to be consistent. I think we still have a long way to go. I think Bradford mentioned that within their solution, they feel comfortable with size and color, which we do as well on many categories. I think that's already kind of scalable and commercial in the world today. I think in order to get to the 100%, we got to be able to help the supply chain make quality call on defects in a consistent way. That's what we've been focused on over the last 18 months. And that's going to be the focus over the next 3 years. And I think as we achieve it together with the industry, that's going to be very meaningful, because it will mean that there is going to be significantly less variance across quality judgment between shipper and receiver, and probably should translate to somewhere around, I would expect, 20 to 25% less rejections or claims. That's what we see, by the way, with some of our large customers, where we actually were deployed across of all their supply chain, i.e. field, pack house, and destination markets, where they have their own QC teams. We see significant reduction in claims, but there is a long way to go to do it in most produce categories and across all regions.
So we all grew up with this famous advert of the man from Del Monte saying yes to the crop being picked. It'll be the AI tool that'll tell us yes when it's the time to go. Wouter, for you, the kind of unknown unknowns, the things that you would like AI to do for you to do in your business in years to come, what are they?
Well, start what Bradford said, to make it more predictable. So there are so many unknowns in growing crops in greenhouses, and there's so many variables to simplify that. A couple of examples. There's not a decent way to predict harvest forecast. Energy management is very complicated. But also scouting diseases and crop protection. So there's many fields where AI can be of help, but also harvesting, etc. So, but my known is that we can. What I know, and I don't know how we are going to solve this, but I think it's on these on many topics. But we have to simplify it, make it more predictable, simplify it, and if we are able to do that, then we can also make technology scalable. Because for now it's too complicated. And I hope that AI will make it and scalable. That's what I believe where it's going to.
Now, in the spirit of this discussion we're having today, I actually went on ChatGPT and I said, "What are the implications of AI on the fresh produce supply chain?" And it gives me a whole list of things, and right at the end, it gives me some strategic takeaways. And it says AI shifts the fresh produce supply chain from experience-driven, relationship-based to data-driven and algorithmically optimized, which I think is interesting. I think it gives you some winners and losers, and I'd like to know what you think of these things. The biggest winners are likely to be, first, integrated retailers with strong data, according to ChatGPT, large growers who can invest in tech, and logistics players with advanced analytics. What do we think of those three? You're nodding there, Bradford, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's validity in each. I think the sense of being able to, have a good common data fabric is something that this industry in many ways could still be viewed as being a long way away from, right?
Sure.
In the sense that there's so much siloed data in production agriculture, whether you're talking row crops or you're talking fresh produce, that you have to say, look, we're not going to boil the ocean. So let's focus on pockets of this where we can really make a tangible difference. And I think, obviously we only focus on maybe 15 or so crops specifically, Chris, but I think we're now at that turning point where your ChatGPT analysis is probably accurate because we're seeing enough data density, right, across some of these crop types that I do think we're at the turning point to being predictable in some of the let's say, implications of things that are happening earlier in the supply chain. So that should be, to your point, and good for the grower, because there should be a sense now that I should be remunerated for the quality I can deliver. It should be good for the retailer to have a more predictable supply of the crops that they want, that we know people want to purchase. And hopefully for everybody in between, all the packers, the shippers, the exporters, who often have been hurt by margins when there's a bad weather event, right? When there's any other thing they can't control, they're going to see better reliability in their profitability. So I think each of those you touch, Chris, has a real piece of validity to them.
Yeah, I think the only problem in the whole equation is the consumer at the end of the chain, and as we're seeing, the consumption of fruits and vegetables everywhere around the world is kind of in a slow but almost inexorable decline, which is a huge problem that we face for our business. The biggest risks that ChatGPT tells me from the implications of AI on the supply chain of fruits and vegetables, the biggest risks are to, it says, small independent growers, traditional middlemen without data advantages, and labor-intensive operations slow to adapt. I think I could have written that even if ChatGPT had. You agree with those, Wouter and Elad? Wouter?
Well, I'm not necessarily think. Well, it depends. Like if large growers are not adapting technology, then I think they also lose. So, and I think there's still room for smaller growers if they adapt the technology, embrace it, and make the right decisions and can make it scalable. They can also win. So I think there's still opportunity. I think this technology can bring opportunity to smaller growers to beat bigger ones. So for me, not necessarily the bigger ones that should win. Of course, if they embrace the AI as well, then but I think there's opportunity.
Yeah, that's the beauty of AI, is that it needs a human being to interpret it and then challenge it sometimes. Elad, what do you reckon to those biggest risks?
I agree, by the way, with Wouter comment on the small growers. But I think, unfortunately, at least what I see, it stays at the hypothetical realm, because the smaller guys, they just have, they're hardly keeping their head above water. So their ability to invest or even take a chance for 6 months on a new technology is just significantly limited than the other guys. What we see as a very dominant trend is that the consolidators of this industry, and that's a trend that probably started 3-4 years ago, and I think is only going to enhance over the next 15 years because of climate change and tariffs and all this kind of stuff. I do think that whoever is going to be more proactive in consolidating their industry or the target produce or whatever markets that they are focused on, I think they're likely going to have an advantage because when that happens, they have an acute need to have a consistently technology platform across all of their businesses globally or regionally, whatever they consolidated. And I do see that they are willing to invest and they get the rewards pretty quickly from the retailers, for example, that they sell to, because those guys appreciate the diversity of production that they have across different categories or across different regions. And that's kind of what we see that started a few years ago, and I think it's going to continue. I do think that, when AI is working commercially and is cheap enough, then yeah, I see the smaller growers actually getting, now they can have negotiation, right, with their bigger buyer on the same kind of data sets. But we probably still, 3 to 8 years from that point.
And of course, there are decisions that human beings can make, which is all about the way they organize themselves. I spent some of last week with a friend of mine who's runs one of the biggest, or is the marketing director of one of the biggest Apple companies in the world, and yet that's essentially a cooperative of thousands of growers, each of whom has no more than 4 hectares of apples to hand. So it's also a question about how we as human beings organize ourselves, and I guess and then apply these technologies to the work that we're doing, and the outcomes that we want to have for the future. Our 1 hour is almost up, and I feel that we could talk for hours to come about this. It's a fascinating subject, and I think we've only touched the tip of the iceberg, and the important thing is there is an iceberg beneath this tip, and that's only going to get bigger as time goes on. And I'm really grateful to Wouter, to Elad, and to Bradford to joining us today to talk through this fascinating topic that's going to affect every part of our business lives, and also, I have to say, our personal lives and the way in which we interact with it. It's a fitting subject on which to close this very interesting briefing for Fruit Logistica. I'm looking forward to seeing each of you in a few days' time in Berlin, the 4th to the 6th of February, to Fruit Logistica 2026. Gentlemen, again, thank you very much indeed for your time today. Thank you to Mike and to David for their interventions earlier. Thank you all for watching. You can watch as ever on Catch Up later on LinkedIn and on the Fruit Logistica website. Look forward to seeing you. Thank you again for joining. And as we do on these calls, we wave at one another and say goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Goodbye, guys.